Y'all want in on one of Tyler Perry's better movies? The Family That Prays. Despite Alice being a broke ass and Charlotte owning a plantation-style house, Alice and Charlotte have been friends for a long time. Charlotte's only son, William, attends the event with his wife, Jillian. Alice tells Jillian that is the hat of all time. William throws shade at his mom for spending a buttload of money. However, Charlotte claps back saying, if only Jillian and him didn't elope, they'd have a grand wedding too. Today, Alice's youngest, Andrea, is getting married, and Charlotte has paid for everything. Andrea's older sister, Pam, helps her get ready, but Andrea hates her fugly-ass Mormon-looking dress. She even complains about Charlotte paying for her entire wedding because she knows Charlotte will just tell all her white friends she helped poor black folks. Tired of it all, Andrea calls her own mom a mammy for being friends with Charlotte, and Pam over her sister's ungrateful ass. Meanwhile, Chris and Ben are also getting ready in the other room. Ben is Pam's husband. He's sporting himself with a famous Tyler Perry wig, and Chris finna be Andrea's husband. After the wedding, Andrea introduces Chris to William, and he offers her and Chris jobs at Cartwright, a company owned by his family. 4 years later, Chris works at the construction site with Ben. He wants to start his own construction company with him, but they don't have any investors to help them. He's feeling more pressured because Andrea is making a lot more money than him. On the other hand, Alice still runs her diner with Pam. A homeless man named Nick walks in, and Alice offers him food and clean clothes like she does regularly. Nick kinda fine. Would y'all ever, a homeless person? Alice tells Pam that Nick used to be a wealthy regular customer before he lost everything. In return, Nick helps her with her financial decisions. Whenever Andrea picks up her son, she always fights with her sister. Pam gets angry because even though Andrea is doing well financially given her degree in finance, she never helps her struggling mother. Eventually, Andrea writes her a $5,000 check before she walks out. When William returns home, he brags to Jillian about the $500 million deal he just signed, saying that his mother will have to turn the company over to him soon. However, when they go in for a hug, Jillian smells someone else's kitty stench on his shirt. Someone sat on that man's face. Meanwhile, Andrea always gives the cold shoulder to Chris and disregards him. Because the company provides her with a house and a Mercedes, Chris hopes she can also talk to William about some of his ideas. But Andrea gets angry every time Chris talks about his plans. Chris tries to get some action, but Andrea not feeling the lumpy-headed man today. Unlike these two, Pam and Ben are doing great. Pam encourages her husband to pursue his dream, even though Ben is afraid of actually making it big and becoming rich. Despite everything, Charlotte and Alice continue to be good friends, and Charlotte even invites Alice to go on a drive with her across the country. Alice declines, saying she has a business to run, but Charlotte still drives her that night to church so she can sing with the choir. To take the business a step further, Charlotte hires Abby Dexter to work for Cartwright and makes her the COO. When William finds out about this, he confronts his mother because he expected to be nepotized, but Charlotte thinks he's not even qualified. Livid, William's butt chin remains extra prominent when frustrated. Chris and Ben head to the bank to get a loan, but they immediately get rejected because their credit score is too low. Then, as Chris tries to make a withdrawal, he finds out that Andrea has another account with almost $300,000 in it. During a meeting, Abby protests the new deal, saying that it will be a financial burden to the company, despite Cartwright being publicly traded. But William says his mother can sell her shares so they can make more money. But Abby is against it because Charlotte will lose the majority vote. William talks down on her, but Abby claps back, saying she overqualified for this job because she has a Yale law degree, 15 years experience, and a master's in finance. Andrea, on the other hand, sides with William. Afterward, Jillian visits, and she gets a whiff of Andrea's stench, making her suspicious that Andrea and her husband may be spanking each other. Ben thinks it's not surprising for a wife to have some hidden money, but Chris knows that Andrea only earns around $60,000 per year, so he's curious where she gets the extra from. Damn, they really underpaying a black woman. Charlotte knows Cartwright won't be able to fund the international deal William signed. They can't back down from it, and even their partner bank won't loan them any more money. The only solution left is for Charlotte to sell 10% of the stock, which will put her in the minority. She's hesitant to selling her shares because she knows William preys on the weak, but with no other choice, she orders Abby to sell it. She threatens her own son that if he burns her, she finna nail his ass. Girl, that phrase got a whole different meaning. Afterwards, William tries to ask Abby out on a date, and she sassily agrees to bring her husband along. Chris finally asks Andrea where she's getting all her money, so she boasts that she's so good at her job, the boss gives her bonuses. Then she claims she doesn't owe her husband an explanation, since it's her money. She looks down on Chris's dream and reminds him that he's no William Cartwright and that he will never have his own company. She talks down on her husband more, and now I hope Pam bitch slaps this hoe. While Ben is telling Pam about their trip to the bank, he accidentally mentions Andrea's other bank account, so Pam promises she'll get to the bottom of it, not knowing her sister bottoming William for that money. Charlotte is overjoyed when Alice changes her mind and decides to accompany her on a cross-country trip. The two mothers head to New Orleans and enjoy their time away from any of their problems. While Charlotte is away, Pam looks after Nick and gives him free food. He smells like ass, so Andrea leaves. Chris decides to visit Andrea at the office, and the receptionist is shocked to have met Andrea's husband for the first time. She says that Andrea usually has a Wednesday appointment. Then Andrea appears, and Chris apologizes for how he acted before. Sir, it's your wife who need to apologize. Divorce her ass and take half of that $300K. When Andrea sees her bosses, she doesn't even introduce Chris. Abby introduces herself and mentions the upcoming company gala and invites Chris since his own wife failed to. Andrea over here looking pissed AF. Just before they leave, Chris stutters to talk to William about his little proposal, despite Andrea's effort to stop him. Chris musters up the courage to ask William if he'd like to invest in their company. William says he'll think about it and will tell Andrea what his answer is. One night, Charlotte and Alice find themselves enjoying live music. A man asks them how they got to know each other, and Charlotte reveals that Alice refused to sell her land when Cartwright was trying to buy it. Then Charlotte tried to talk her into it, but they ended up being friends instead. That was 30 years ago. The man ends up hitting on Charlotte. Meanwhile, a big back man tries to do the same to Alice, but she said hell to the no. Elsewhere at the gala, Andrea orders Chris not to talk to anybody and to avoid embarrassing her. Then she leaves him alone. Later, the other employees laugh as Chris looks for his wife, and they tell him she must be with William somewhere. Abby overhears and learns that William clapping Andrea's cheeks. She reprimands the receptionist to leave because she's getting too messy. Meanwhile, William is telling Andrea that he will fire Chris and Ben to avoid any possible competition in the future. Andrea is pleased because she'll be divorcing Chris someday. While they're flirting and kissing, they fail to notice that Jillian has been watching them. When Jillian confronts William regarding the affair, all he says is that he loves his wife. A couple of days after the gala, Abby calls Andrea to her office, revealing that she knows about her affair with William, including using company funds to book hotels. Although taken aback, Andrea says it's her skills that got her the job. So Abby warns her that she'll get fired if she continues stroking William's stick, but Andrea is confident that William will protect her. Girl, that man's freckled D not worth it. Abby tells Andrea that she gives women a bad name, having to screw her way to the top. Andrea says she was top of her class and has made record profits for the company. Abby fires her ass, but Andrea says Abby has no authority to make her leave. One night, the two geriatrics go to a strip club. A fine-ass man tries to give Alice a lap dance, but Alice throws holy water on him. Another comes by and she slaps her Bible to scare him. Later, Alice wakes up in the middle of the night only to find Charlotte a bit disoriented. Charlotte doesn't recognize her at first, but she calms down eventually. Then she finally reveals that she has early-onset Alzheimer's, and 3 more doctors that she visited said the same thing. Charlotte is scared of what will happen in the future. Alice comforts her and assures her that everything will be fine. So Charlotte makes her promise not to let William put her away when her condition worsens. One morning, Ben and Chris receive their last checks, and their foreman says they're fired. But Chris tells Ben he already made some moves so they can start their own company. Then Andrea barges in, confronting Chris about the money he took. It turns out Chris has taken all of Andrea's money to start his company. He says it's for their family, but Andrea says it's hers and demands that he give it back. She even says Ben and Chris too weak to be a William Cartwright. Then Ben finally snaps and reveals that Andrea's been getting her back broken by her boss. He adds that all the workers talk behind Chris's back because apparently everyone knows about it. To add salt to the wound, Andrea reveals that the money is from William because he is her man. Chris slaps her so hard, she gets thrown over the counter. Still, Andrea refuses to give in. She tells Chris to pack his bags and leave the house, adding that their son is not his, but William's. Meanwhile, Charlotte is surprised when Jillian visits her, crying. Jillian reveals that William has been having an affair and that she doesn't know what to do. Then Charlotte advises her to make her demands because she's lucky enough they don't have a prenup. In exchange for the advice, Jillian reveals William's plan to vote Charlotte out of the board. After the fight, Alice tries to talk some sense to her daughter, but Andrea already plans to divorce Chris and insists that William will marry her. Alice begs her daughter not to do it because William will never marry her. Andrea throws it back in her mom's face, saying Alice let their dad leave their family for another woman. Elsewhere, William is showing some of their clients around when Chris throws a punch at him. Chris holds him over the edge, and he could have fallen if the other workers didn't step in to stop Chris. Later, Andrea is surprised that instead of William, it's Jillian who enters the hotel room. Jillian tells Andrea to stay away from her family because William wouldn't want to be seen with Andrea in public. Then she walks out before Andrea can even say anything. Back at the office, William is shocked when his mother calls for a board meeting. He's very confident they can vote her out, and it's a unanimous decision for most of the shareholders. There is only one company left that hasn't made a vote, the Calvary Company. But this company has been silent for 15 years, so they don't expect them to show up. Then Charlotte calls the members of the Calvary Company, and William is shocked to see Nick and Alice enter the room. It turns out that Nick used to be a stockbroker in their company until William kicked him out many years ago. Nick has been advising Alice over the years, and now she owns a significant number of shares at Cartwright. Being her best friend and all, Alice votes on keeping Charlotte in position. Because they fail to kick her out, Charlotte then fires her son and lets Abby retain her position as the COO. Even Pam is shocked that her mother is apparently a millionaire. "Grab that bag, sis. I need to befriend a rich-ass white woman myself." After the altercation with Jillian, Andrea wants to hear the truth from William. William says he got fired and that he will never leave his wife to marry Andrea. Andrea can't believe it, so she mentions her son, but William is not convinced that the boy is his. He ends their relationship right then, and then he tells Andrea to return her car to the company. Miss Girl done lost everything in a day. She went through it. Charlotte's condition just keeps getting worse. And when she finally dies, Alice is the first one to hear the news. She gives Charlotte's eulogy before she gets buried, and she even sings her favorite song. Sometime after that, Chris and Ben successfully start their own company. William is still with Jillian, and Andrea and Chris are already separated, though Chris continues to support the kid. Andrea looking like she on Section 8 housing. Nick is no longer homeless. As for Alice, she puts her restaurant up for sale. She takes Charlotte's car and a picture of them together and goes on another trip across the country. I really enjoyed this Tyler Perry mess. It was one of his better acted, written, and directed movies. And I'm glad the villains got what they deserved. What did you guys think of this one?
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you would like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.